We're live at Siftach for Coffee and Kabbalah, pre-Rosh Hashana Shir. Woo! Today is the birthday of the world, so happy birthday, world. 5,007. How old are you now? Right? We're 5,783 years old into creation, and we're sitting here, and Rosh Hashana is in a couple of days from now, and we're getting spiritually ready, in tune with the spiritual energy of Rosh Hashana. Thank you to Shira for sponsoring today's Shira. Really appreciate it. The Shira sponsored Eloi Nishma Shira's Saba, grandfather, whose yahrzeit is this Friday. His name was Shimon ben Shlomo. His neshama should have an aliyah. We also want to keep in mind our dear friend Yehudit Bat Stacy. She should have a complete recovery. Refuah Shalema. We love you. And anyone else that's davening for anything, let's just do a little hello. Sorry, it comes with it. Hi. And this beautiful view in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, Rosh Hashana, there's a lot to unpack, so we'll see what we get through. If anybody needs to go early, please go, no apologies. Okay, where shall we begin? Should we begin with the Chauffeur? I can't even. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the history of Rosh Hashana, right? So where does Rosh Hashana, who decided that we're going to celebrate Rosh Hashana? So historically in the Torah, Hashem tells us, I want you to celebrate the first day of the first month of the creation of the world as a celebration to crown me as your king. This is what Hashem says in the Torah in Vayikra. He says, Dabra b'nei Yisrael lemar b'chodesh hashvi'i, actually the 7th month, le'echad l'chodesh, on the first day, it will be your Shabbason, Zichron, Trua, Mikra, Kodesh. So the words we have are Zichron, so it's a day of remembrance. It's a day of Trua. What does Trua mean? Blowing the shofar. And it's a day of Mikra Kodesh. It's a holy day, right? Malacha Zavoda Lo Sasu V'Krafta Misha Lashem, right? So we don't do work. It's a day, it's a holiday. So we're going to unpack, what does Hashem want from us on this day, right? Does he want us to sit there and remember things all day? What do we want us to remember? What are we blowing, right? It's a day of blowing. So the Gemara says that Hashem says to the Jewish people, I want you to crown me as your king. I want you to accept me as your king. This is in the Gemara Rosh Hashana. So there's a whole Masechet Rosh Hashana that really goes into what is actually happening spiritually on this day. So let's go back. Why this day? Why did Hashem pick this day? Because this is the day when Adam was created, and this is the day when Adam Rishon crowned Hashem as king over the world. Before that, Hashem was king over angels, celestial beings, who didn't really have any choice but to be his subjects. And to be a true king, and not just a dictator who forces his subjects, who forces himself upon his subjects, there has to be choice. We have to elect you as our king and choose you as our king. And Hashem created this entire world so that there would be human beings with their own identities, with free choice, who choose to be in a partnership and in a relationship with Hashem. And Adam Rishon, on the day he was born, he looked around and he said, like, let us crown Hashem, the creator who created all of us, as our king. And he said, Bo nishtachave v'nichra v'nivracha l'fnei Hashem osenu. And he called all of mankind to sing prayer tefillos to Hashem. We sing his tefillos on Mizmar with David on Friday night, right? It's included in Tehillim. Mizmar Shir Yom HaShabbos, right? When Adam and all the animals, and it goes through each animal and how they sang their thanks and to Hashem as crowning them as king, right? It goes through the elephant song and the song of every one of the creations. So this is the day when Adam crowned Hashem as king. So every single year, we recrown Hashem as king, and we look around and we say, well, yes, Hashem, we want you to continue being our king. So that's on a simple level. It's also a day of teshuvah. Why? Because Adam Rishon was then forgiven for the first sin. He messed up the first time, and Hashem forgave him for the sin. And so Rosh Hashana teaches us that it's human to err and it's divine to forgive, right? It's human to mess up, and it's Hashem's divinity to keep forgiving without end. And to having a real relationship, right? A real relationship is not where we're perfect. It's where we mess up, we do things wrong, and our partner understands and forgives us. And that's a true relationship. It's also, so let's go deeper into what it is. Also, historically, what else happened throughout the years on Rosh Hashana? Let me just go into the forgiveness. Hashem said to Adam, you are a sign unto your children, as you were judged before me this day and emerged forgiven, so your children will be judged before me this day and emerged forgiven, right? And on Rosh Hashana, also, it's a time for Rahmanis, it's a time for divine mercy, and it's a time when we learn that from tradition, from the Masorah, that Sarah, who was created barren without the ability to conceive and have children, was granted her tefillos were answered on Rosh Hashana above, and that's when she was granted where her didn't change it, she was able to have children. Rivka and Rachel, who also were barren, also were answered Rosh Hashana, and famously Chana. How many Chanas we have here? Chana. You're also Chana? Second. Yeah? You? All the Chanas were named, probably the first Chana that we know in the Torah was Chana, the mother of Shmuel Navi, who was famously known for davening on Rosh Hashana and in front of the Aron Kodesh, in the Mishkan in Shiloh, davening, weeping her heart out for a child, and this all happened on Rosh Hashana, and that's given to us, and her tefillos were then answered, and she gave birth to a child on Rosh Hashana, I think, the next year, Yeah, and she was also blessed the child the next year on Rosh Hashana. So that is actually, the story of Hannah is actually the basis for so many halachas about Rosh Hashana and about tefillah in general. So we learn a lot from this story. We also learn a lot about where, there's also a lot of Chassidus about what the conversation actually was between Eli, who was saying, why are you drunk? And what he really meant on a deeper level, on a spiritual level, and what Rosh Hashana is, what the essence of Rosh Hashana is all about based on Hannah's tefillahs. We actually read the Haftorah of Hannah, of the story of Hannah on Rosh Hashana, and that we also read in the Torah reading the story of Sarah, Imenu, davening, being barren and davening for children. So it's a time of Yeshua's, of Hashem turning to our prayers and turning to us more than ever. These are all on the shot level, I guess, on the historical simple level. We're going to get much deeper. And the last thing that we're told is that Yosef was freed from prison after 12 years in prison on Rosh Hashana as well. Okay, let's get into the Kabbalah of Rosh Hashana a little deeper. Let's start with crowning Hashem as king. So we've discussed a little bit, you were here on Shabbos, but we discussed it a little bit, that there's, the Shir Shirim compares our relationship to Hashem as a love story. That ultimately we have so many different ways we relate to Hashem, as our father, as our shepherd, as our lover, as our dove, right? As our sister. But the truest, deepest, and according to Rabbi Akiva, the greatest, the most holy book in the entire Torah is Shir Shirim, where it compares the relationship to Hashem and that of two passionate lovers. Shir Shirim was very controversial for a long time, to the point that Art Scroll found it like they didn't want people to be misled and think that, like the illusions, the sexual illusions that are in Shir Shirim. So they actually translated it into English using the midrashic terms. So where it says, we make the kiss that Hashem will grant me with 1,000. He grants his wife, his beloved, with 1,000 kisses. They'll translate it as Hashem gave us the man and took us out of Mitzrayim, which, because that's what it alludes to, maybe in the Medrash. So they were afraid that people would be led askance to think the wrong things and think something that's not true if they would translate it. And this is, over the years, has been brought out, but ultimately we learned that it's the deepest form of love, and you can really only understand the love. The only way to ever even experience divine love and experience Hashem's love is through experiencing that with a human being, and through being able to have that level and intense love of being able to love another person to that extent, of being able to let go of yourself and have that great passion and intimacy with another person, and that love. Then we can begin to understand the love that Hashem has for us, and the love that we have, and the yearning that we have for Hashem, only through experiencing that through a human being. Like it says in anyways, I'm going on a long tangent. Why did I even get to Shir Shirim? Oh, because we're speaking about the loving relationship. Kabbalah tells us that this entire time of Elul and Tishrei, like we mentioned before, is a time of deep love that Hashem has for us. Elul, we learn, is a time of dating, of courting Hashem, right? We mentioned this last week, and throughout the time, we're getting to know Hashem, we're re-entering that relationship. And then Rosh Hashana is the big proposal, right? Rosh Hashana is when Hashem asks us, and this is literally brought down in the Zohar and in the Arizal, the craziest thing, that every year in Rosh Hashana, just like there was that time when, the first time when Adam proclaimed Hashem as king, and Hashem was waiting for that moment where he would become king, where we were choosing him to be king over the world. Every year in Rosh Hashana, Hashem proposes in the night, and Hashem asks us and says, will you crown me as king? Like it says, I want you to crown me as king. And we learn in multiple places in Kabbalah that there's something called, that Hashem, just like a lover who would propose to his beloved, is waiting for an answer, right? And until she gives the answer, he's holding his breath, right? He can't sleep, he can't do anything, right? He's waiting for the answer. And let's say he has to wait till the next day. She's like, let me think about it, right? Imagine that, like, inhale, and like how when he finally hears the yes from her, he can relax and exhale, right? And breathe this new life. So similarly with Hashem, we learn that every year on the night of Rosh Hashana, Hashem asks us again, will you recommit? Will you accept me as your king, right? Will you turn to me, right, in every moment that you need? Will you accept me as the king over every detail of your life? And we tell Hashem, let us sleep on it, right? We're going to sleep on it. We'll answer you in the morning. We need time to think, because it's a huge responsibility to commit to a life of living a life of Hashem being our king, right? Means holding ourselves to a much higher standard, right? Holding ourselves to a higher integrity. That's why people are so disappointed when someone who presents himself as an Orthodox Jew, right, messes up. It's much more disappointing and upsetting than if somebody who doesn't hold themselves to that standard messes up. Because when you say, I'm committing to this relationship with Hashem and I want you to be my king, I'm saying I'm going to hold myself to a much higher standard, right? I'm expected to hold myself to a level of integrity. I'm going to answer to you. I'm going to answer to this. And every detail of my life is going to be for you, right? I'm committing my life, just like it is to commit your life to somebody, but we're committing forever to Hashem, who has the highest expectations of us, right? Hashem has very high standards in this relationship, right? 613 demands, right, of us in this relationship. So we say, let us sleep on it, because you're asking a lot of us, right? And in the morning, it says that until we give our answer, when we blow the shofar, that's our screaming, yes, 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 1,000 times yes, right? That's us saying, of course, yes, and that's what the shofar blowing is. But until we give that yes, we learn in Kabbalah that there's something called an asira, where it's like an inhale of the whole entire cosmos, it says, and the world is suspended, waiting with bated breath to see what our answer will be. And all of creation, because the entire world, all the higher worlds and lower worlds are created for Hashem to be king over us, Hashem to have the relationship with us, a true relationship where there's an individual who chooses to be in the relationship and messes up, right? And there's forgiveness and there's growth. And if we don't say yes, and if we don't accept Hashem as king, then all of it, right? Then all of the cosmos haven't fulfilled their intention in creation. Hello, beautiful. So the entire creation is suspended, holding their breath the entire night of Rosh Hashana, waiting. And spiritually, what's happening in the world, the Kabbalah says, not that I know, but this is what I've read, that there is a removal, a siluk, an asira of separation of Hashem, kind of an inhale, where Hashem removes some of his light. So, and the world is weak, waiting for an answer. And some of the Kabbalists, all the Kabbalists have said that they physically felt weak the night of Rosh Hashana because they were in touch with this weakening of Hashem's energy in the world. So the night of Rosh Hashana, they felt physically weak, right? They couldn't stand, they couldn't walk from feeling this weakness, the heaven weakening, right? That vulnerability and that weakening, a removal of Hashem's full chayas, waiting for the yes from us, waiting to see if we're going to accept Hashem as our king. And when we blow the shofar and say yes, then there's an exhale, and then Hashem renews the world with a new or, an or chadash that comes from, right, like Rosh Hashana, the beginning of the year, right? The new light that comes from a much higher level, from a much deeper level, from this unity that comes from this yes that we give. But it's such a powerful idea. And this Nasira, and I read a little bit in the Pri-Eitz Chaim based on the teachings of the Rizal, and they said that the first Nasira, or removal of light, was when Adam went to sleep. In order that we learned that Adam was created as one, right? There was masculine and feminine all in one person, and there was no other. And there was no other type of relationship. We said, I'm alone, right? There's no give and take. Where's the relationship? So Hashem had to make that removal of dividing the masculine and female, which in Kabbalistic terms doesn't really matter. But in order for that to happen, it was such a painful, even though it's such a positive experience because it allows for unity and oneness, that separation allows for the oneness, it was such a painful experience, Adam had to be in a state of sleeping for it to happen. And that was the original Nasira, the original separation that allowed now for a male and a female to be created that can have true unity, because you can't have true unity if you're not separate, right? If you're enmeshed as one, you can't really have unity. One swallows the other, right? True unity is when there's separation. And that was when that happened, Adam and Chava, it was mirroring what was happening above. There was a separation of the masculine and the feminine, of the godly energies, in order that there can be a unity. So that sleep that happens when that first night of Rosh Hashana, and is hinted to in the word Rosh Hashana, which also can be Shina, which is sleep. There's a certain level of sleeping that we need to ascend to a very high level to achieve that separation, to achieve that unity. And that actually is also said in Kabbalah to happen every single Friday. When it happened with the original Friday with Adam and Chava, every Friday there's a level of divine sleep and separation, and there were certain Kabbalists that would sleep every Friday to achieve that level of sleep and that separation that leads to that unity, reunification on Shabbos with Hashem. So these are really divine concepts. I don't necessarily understand fully, but I do think it's just so beautiful to understand that reflected in our relationship. In order for us to reunite with Hashem, there's that separation for the night where we're kind of like, this like a bride and a groom before their wedding, they don't see each other in order to have that reunification, but on a much deeper level, right? There's a removal of all of the cosmos suspended, just waiting. And when we say that, yes, Hashem will recommit to you we're going to recommit to you. We want you as our king. We want you as our lover. We're saying yes to this proposal. That's when everyone has an exhale, and there's a renewed, rejuvenated love and life breathed into our relationship with Hashem. So I just love that mashal of Rosh Hashanah, of understanding it as Hashem waiting for us to say yes, and us really taking the time to think over, right, what it means to commit to Hashem, what it means to say yes to this proposal, not just be like, sure, we'll wake up and blow the shofar. What does that mean for me? What does Hashem want for me? What can I give in this relationship? What kind of yes am I giving, right? And to renew that, just like I said, every one of us, at least for me, that we renewed our vows every year, right? I don't know why that's not a thing, because we renew our vows with Hashem, but I wish every year there was like that. Do we want to recommit, and what am I recommitting to? And really taking stock count of like an elul of the past year, Like we're looking at the past year, where have we grown, where have we fallen apart, how have we improved, and what does it mean to recommit to our relationship this year? And it would really strengthen us so much, right? When we say, do I want to recommit? And that yes would be so much stronger, right? And I would recommit with understanding of what I'm committing to, what's expected of me, and it would bring us so much closer together, right? To have that like suspense, like that like beauty in that suspense of like, will we or won't we, right? So that's the beauty of what's happening in Rosh Hashanah. Then we'll get on to Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the wedding, it's the unity, it's the oneness, where we're, Ne'ilah is that like intimacy where we're alone with Hashem and the door is locked behind us. We'll get to that by Yom Kippur. But for now, and then Sukkot is the Shabbat Bracha, it's the celebration of our love, right? But we'll talk about that when the time comes. Now we're talking about this time of proposing and recommitting to Hashem and recrowning Hashem as our king. Shetamlichuni Aleichem is mentioned all the time, right? Throughout the Tfilos and Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so let's talk about, okay, so the Gemara speaks a little bit about, let me just take a coffee break. Let's let that seep in. Okay. The Gemara in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, I didn't bring down the text, but it goes through it says that Hashem asks us of him to turn to him with Malchios, Zichronos, and Shofros. By show of hands, who's heard of these three words in relation to the Rosh Hashanah Musaf Davening? So the Musaf Davening is composed of three parts: the Malchios, Zichronos, and Shofros. And the Gemara, I wish I had the text in front of me, but it says that Hashem asks us to turn to him with these three ideas. And these are the core ideas of the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah, of the three themes of Rosh Hashanah, and they make up that whole long Musaf that we have on Rosh Hashanah. There's the first section called Malchios. You'll see it's a few paragraphs. It's each one of these sections are made up of 10 verses, a few from Torah, a few from Nevi'im, and Ksuvim, and they're each made up of 10 parts. But the themes run very deep. These three themes of why are we choosing these three themes? What is Malchios? It means from the term of crowning. What is Zichronos, which means remember? And what is Shofros, right? It means Chauffeur. What do they mean on a deeper level? So on the first level, we have the three levels of we have the three themes of Rosh Hashanah: crowning Hashem as our king, Zicharon, Hashem remembering all of our deeds, right? It's a day of remembrance, of remembering all of our deeds throughout the year and writing us down and remembering and writing us down for the next year that we're going to have with Hashem. And Shofros, it's blowing the shofar. So those are the three main things of Rosh Hashanah. We want to understand them on a much deeper level. What's going on a deeper spiritual level. So there's let me find this. There's a Kabbalist called Rabbi Yosef Alba who says that, where is it? Is us accepting Hashem and having Amunah that Hashem is king of the entire world, right? It's the Melucha, Hashem is king and creator of the entire world. It's the day of creation, of Hashem created us, and we acknowledge that creation. Zichronos is acknowledging not just that Hashem is creator of the entire world in a general way, but that Hashem remembers every single detail, that Hashem is the ruler over every small detail in our lives, and Hashem is involved. It's acknowledging that Hashem is not just the one who created us once and then abandoned us, but that Hashem is involved every moment of my day, in every single word and every step that I take. And it's that remembrance, that Hashem is present in remembering every detail of my life, and Hashem is present with me in every moment of my life. And those are two different beliefs, right? Someone might believe that God created the world, but not believe that Hashem is involved in every moment of their lives. That's not real, right? But that is one of the basic tenets of Emunah. And this is according to Rabbi Yosef Alba, that these are the three fundamentals. And then Shofros, he says, is the belief in the Torah, because the shofar was sounded at the giving of the Torah. There was a Kol Gadol Lo Yasaf, and it's saying, I don't only believe in Hashem, but I also believe that the Torah is divine and eternal, just like that blast of the shofar that was continuous, it says, and it never ended. So we believe in Hashem as creator of the world. We believe Hashem in Hashgacha Pratis and divine, that Hashem is involved in my life, and we believe in the eternity and the truth of every word of the Torah. So that's according to Rabbi Yosef Alba. In the Gemara, it goes through each of these themes and what it means in our lives. So Malchios, Melucha, is committing to Hashem to be present in our lives, not just in the general again, but we learn from Tfilas Chana that Eli was disturbed why she davened for physical things. Rosh Hashanah is such a spiritual day, and he wanted to know, why are you drunk with personal requests? This is a day of, like, imagine someone's proposing to you and you're like, okay, but first make me a sandwich, right? Like, or the magnitude is like, I want your love, but she's like, but I want all these physical requests. It's just inappropriate time. He was like, another time. No, why today of all days on Rosh Hashanah in the Mishkan are you just weeping for your personal request? You want a child, but now's not the time to ask for it. And this is a question that's actually echoed in Shabbos. We actually we take out most of the brachos and Shemona Esrei that are for personal requests, because it's a time that we're like separating from the physical nitty-gritty of daily life and we're connecting on a higher level. And Rosh Hashana, the tefillahs are full of personal requests, right? In Avinu Malkeinu, we're asking for all of the physical things we need in our life. So you would think it's an inappropriate time, just like Eli thought of Hannah. And we learn that in a way, what we're saying is we don't want Hashem just to be in a relationship with us in a general way. We're saying, I want, specifically on Rosh Hashanah, when we're crowning Hashem and we're bringing Hashem into our lives, we are specifically, that's the time when we bring Hashem into the physical details of our lives. And we're asking for all the details of our lives. We're saying, Hashem, I want you involved in every detail of my life. I want to have, like Chada said, my soul wants these physical things. I want not just empty physical things, I want them to be imbued with godliness. I want you in my daily life. I want to connect to you when I'm having coffee, when I'm taking a walk. I want you in every detail of my life. And that's why we bring Hashem and ask him to be king over our life, not just in the bigger picture, but in every small detail, right? We don't want to have a partner that just is there for the big things. We want to partner with us every step of the way. Hopefully we want to love that every small thing is imbued with their love, right? Every small detail is reflected in that love. So we want Hashem to be king over every aspect of our lives, even the physical ones, and especially every detail. So that was just an idea of Melucha, of bringing Hashem and accepting him as our king. Then Zichronos, okay, this is where it gets really interesting. Zichronos is saying that it's a day of remembrance, right? And we read, I need a second, I have a siddur. I want to read in the siddur where we read that Hashem remembers every single deed that we did throughout the year, right? And it says that, I have the English. In the Unasana Tokef prayer, right, one of the big prayers in Rosh Hashanah, and Tefillas Rosh Hashanah, we say, it is true that you alone are the one who judges, proves, knows, and bears witness. Anyone know the original text? Emet, thank you. Emet Shema, Dayan, yeah, V'yodea V'ed, but thank you. Who writes and seals, who remembers all that was forgotten. Remember that? V'zocher es kol ha'nishkachos. Kol ha'nishkachos. You will open the book of Chronicles, or you'll open the book of all the things that happened. It will read itself, and everyone's signature is in it, right? I have this image, and maybe it's only me, but I don't think it is, of like a child somehow getting the message that on Rosh Hashanah, everything you did all year is remembered by Hashem, right? So you better behave, because now, and catch up on mitzvahs as much as you can, because now Hashem is going to remember everything that you ever did on this day, right? And he's going to judge you. And I imagine like this big scale, right? And he's going to he's going to remember every single thing that you did, all the bad things on one side, right? Every time you did something wrong or you didn't do something good, it's going to be on one side, all the good things on the other side. And you're going to be judged based on that, right? On what kind of year you're going to have, right? So that's the picture that I have. Anyone else have that image?
Yes, because that's
of like,
what we were taught.
Right? We were taught that. So we're not going to say that that's not true in some way, but I'm not going to like deny, I don't know where that source, I don't know where it says that, like Hashem puts the good deeds and the bad deeds on one side. I'm sure there's places where it says that. But whenever you say Hashem remembers everything throughout a big theme, right? What do we call, what's Yom, what do we, when we light the candles, what do we say? Lahad likner shel? No? Exactly, right. Yom HaZikaron, right? There's a lot of names for Rosh Hashanah. There's Yom Rosh Hashanah, Yom Adin, Yom Teruah, and Yom HaZikaron. The one we say is a day of remembrance, right? What does that evoke in you when you hear the day of remembrance? Like, what are we remembering? Right. We're also remembering the Kedah, right? That's what is Hashem remembering. So it's a lot about remembrance. But I know that, like, when I say Hashem remembers everything, there's still that, like, attachment to, like, okay, like, anything throughout the year, like, Hashem's going to remember it, and Rosh Hashanah, it's going to be on the scale, right? And it's going to tip the scale either way, right? So I heard something so beautiful. If you actually look at the text where it says that Hashem remembers, although, like, for some reason, I remember, the way I used to see it is, like, Hashem remembers all the naughty things you did, right? All the times you messed up. In fact, it says Hashem remembers all the good deeds. That's the words that it says. It says that Hashem remembers all the forgotten good deeds that we did. And it says Hashem remembers us for the good. And what are the things that we've attached to Yom HaZikaron? We build a Chauffeur to remind Hashem of the Akedah, of when we received the Torah, when our original marriage with Hashem, right? And I don't know why we have this association with Hashem remembering the bad, but what actually brought down is that Hashem remembers Zaycha Kol Nishkachais, right? Hashem remembers all that was forgotten. What Hashem means is that Hashem remembers all of those good things that you did that was forgotten, right? But nobody. How many times yesterday did you do something positive that maybe you didn't even give yourself the time to appreciate, right? Did you do something positive for your kids, for somebody else, smile at somebody, all the good deeds that you accumulate, right? Over the last day even, that you forgot, that nobody mentioned, that might have even been forgotten by you. All of that, it says Hashem is recorded in the book of Chronicles, and all the nishkachais, all of those things that no one remembers, that no one even appreciates you for, Hashem remembers them, and Rosh Hashanah, He brings all those to the surface. Right? We're in a relationship with Hashem that's like, what kind of, imagine, let me say the positive, a relationship, or true relationship, right? When we have kids, We're not trying to be like, remember you did this bad, remember you did this bad, remember you did this bad, right? More relationship with someone that we love, right? When we're remembering all the things, we're remembering all the good things. We're not saying they're remembering that fight, remember that fight, which when we're in a relationship with somebody, the things that we take pictures of, the things that we write down in our diary, we don't take pictures of all the bad times, right? Why is nobody sitting with the camera taking a picture of every fight that we had? Because those are not the things that we want to remember when we love somebody, right? We want to forget those things. Those are things that we say, forget that, let's move on to something better. Imagine a relationship with somebody who wrote down every single bad thing that you did, every fight that you had. Well, sometimes you write it down to vent, and then brings it all up on your anniversary and is like, listen, I want to tell you all the bad things you did and everything that you did with me, and I wrote it all down and I have picture proof and I have receipts and text, right? You're like, that's a toxic relationship. No thanks, right? That's not a relationship that Hashem has with us. He's not recording all the, just like a loving parent wants to encourage us to do more good things, and I'll get to that in a moment. Our relationship, and I always said, like, why don't we take pictures of fights? Why is everyone always posting on like social media? Only they're like, it's so unreal, right? It feels so illegitimate. Everyone fights. And it really bothered me for a long time. I'm like, next time we're fighting, I'm taking pictures and I'm going to post it on social media to offset the negative, all the positive things, because it gives such a false perception of what marriage is like to everybody, right? And everyone feels like, well, we're the only one who fight. Everyone fights. Everyone else is posting like happy pictures all day. But then it dawned on me that those are not the things you want to remember, right? You're not airing out that, not because you don't want to air your dirty laundry, but because you yourselves don't want to remember that. You want that to go away. And what you want to focus on and highlight, it's a high, and what people need to understand is that Facebook is the highlight reel, right? It's only the high points of your life, because that's the things you want to remember. And if people don't understand that every single moment, then their life is going to be miserable, right? If they're going on and seeing everyone's highlight reel and thinking that that's the only thing that there is, right? But we're not necessarily going to take pictures and record all the negativity, even though sometimes it's like, it's like what? Right?
Like
thank you.
Can I say something?
Yeah, for sure.
I think the remembering
Yeah.
shows us something about the quality of the relationship.
Yeah.
Like parents and family, they remember everything about their child.
Yeah.
Yes. Like I remember his birth and
Yeah.
the pregnancy.
Yeah,
and
100%.
everything.
It shows a
I hold
preciousness
the
when you
whole,
remember things.
The whole picture
Yeah.
of his life. And I think it's very close to the relationship.
Yeah.
Like
Even,
when
you're saying
if
even the
you're-
bad things?
Even the bad and the good
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, 100%.
Just remembering
Everything.
for the
Right.
for your child.
Yeah.
And in Rosh Hashana to stand mul HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
And remember everything. Yeah.
And to know he remembers everything.
Yeah.
About us and about the world.
Yeah.
Right?
You're right. I think you're right. I think Hannah saying is right. It's true that there's a value in not just like shading over everything and saying I only remember the good points, right? Even in childhood, like it builds us and it makes us a stronger person when we can acknowledge everything. And I think that's true. I think Hashem remembers everything, right? It says everything that happened. Hashem is saying, you're standing before me. I remember everything, all the good and the bad, and I want you to marry me again, right? And I want you to propose to me again. 100%. I also think though that I think that on top of that, the nishkachos, the like things that like you forgot, the things that Hashem focuses on to write down and remember in the tefillah are all the positive things, right? We say Hashem remembers the Akedah when we sacrifice, when Avram, we want to remember Avram, who's the one who found you to begin with, right? He found you and started this love relationship that we have with you, right? We want to remember all and focus and highlight all the good things. So we're highlighting all the good things, but we're knowing that all the bad things are there, right? I'm not denying them, because if someone's in denial of everything bad, that's also not a true relationship. So we're saying I'm not denying all the bad, it's there, and I'm Hashem of a forgiveness, and that's what a true relationship is about, the bad and the good. But what I want to highlight and remember, like, and celebrate is like all the growth that we've had through the bad and the good. You're right, and we're going to talk about that. Thanks for bringing me to reality. So Zichronos is that idea of divine remembrance, of knowing that we stand before Hashem and we're recalling everything in our relationship, the good and the bad, and we're still here together and reuniting and recommitting, and that also to feel relieved that throughout the year, if we do things that we feel like no one appreciates and we might not even appreciate, to know this is the time that it's all coming to the surface and it's being noticed and it's being appreciated, and even if no one else noticed it and not even me, that Hashem has microscope vision, right? And he notices all those small things, and it's a time when it's coming to the surface to just remind you. Sometimes someone feels down about themselves, right? Especially when you're remembering all of the things in your relationship, and you need someone to remind you that although there might have been good and bad, you're forgetting, and you might feel like the bad outweighs the good, all the fights that we had, you're forgetting this time and this time and this time and this time, and we need to pick each other up, right? Sometimes I'd be like, remember you did this. Sometimes we need our partner to remind us all of the good that maybe they forgot because they're seeing it in a negative light, right? They're only seeing the negativity because that's overwhelming sometimes, because that stands out. And we need someone to point out and say, but there were so many things that you forgot that you did. And then they're like, oh yeah, you're right. And that strengthens us so much more, right? Okay, so that's Zichronos in one level. And then the Gemara says, so there's the two main things of Rosh Hashanah are proclaiming and accepting Hashem as our king, and the zichronos and remembering everything throughout our relationship, the good and the bad, and resurfacing and bringing for as zchus all of the forgotten good things. And then the Gemara says that how are those both accomplished? Both of them are accomplished through shofar, right? Shofar, because we coronate a king through the way that a king is coronated was through blowing trumpets throughout the Torah every time and throughout history. That was the way we coronated someone as king. So that's why we blow the shofar to crown Hashem as king, to accept it, to do something verbal, to vocalize and to call out and say yes and verbalize our acceptance to Hashem and that comes from the core, right? Because sometimes there's something that I can't put into words. There's a feeling of no word can express the feeling that I'm feeling right now, but it can come from a cry from my soul, right? I could just cry out from my soul and bring out. And the shofar resembles all those different cries from the soul. When we blow the shofar and all the different blasts to say those things that we can't say with words. And it's that connection, and it's revealing that connection that we want Hashem over beyond words, right? It's that love beyond words, and it's that I can't even say yes because I'm so overcome with emotion, and it resembles the cry of an infant or the cry of an adult or a broken person. And we're gonna blow the shofar soon and talk about that in a few minutes. And zichronos, the remembrance, how is that done through shofar? Because the shofar, this is probably one of my favorite teachings of Rosh Hashana. The shofar throughout history is something that Hashem planted throughout history, and when we blow the shofar, it reminds Hashem of so many things that maybe he forgot, right? Or in your relationship, you're standing before and you're like, ugh, it's been another year where we said we're going to be together and we said we're going to have a loving relationship, and again the year happened, right? And how many times we face it with our beloved, right? We're like, this year is going to be amazing, and then the year passes and it's our anniversary again, and we're like, another year of just being overwhelmed with life and forgetting to focus on our relationship the way we wanted to. And when we blow the shofar, sometimes we need that reminder, but remember this time and this time, and we forget those things. And the shofar is that reminder of all those times, because the blowing, it's like the photograph, the time before photographs. The shofar is like a audible reminder that reminds us and evokes all of those memories that we have without Hashem throughout history, from the beginning. So I know that in the Torah itself, there's countless situations of the shofar, and I think the shofar is one of the most romantic symbols from Hashem. And Hashem is saying, I planted this symbol of love throughout all of history, these little love notes to remind you of my love for you. And then Rosh Hashanah, I want you to blow that, bring out that love note and see all those symbols, right?
What do you mean throughout history?
So first by the Kedah. I'm sure there's before, and help me out if there's more times I'm missing, but by the Kedah, when this time of tremendous love of Avram and Hashem proving their love for one another, and that moment of emotion, there Hashem planted the shofar, right? There was a ram trapped there, and there was was the first symbolism of the shofar, right? And it's like Hashem planted this moment to remember that special moment and bring out the shofar now, remember that loving moment, that huge, huge step in our relationship that we took. Then again by Har Sinai, right? We had that shofar.
All three psukim are from Har Sinai.
Really? Wait, there's the three from the Torah. There's the Psachia Golan gives 100 reasons why you blow the shofar, right? Or 10.
The ones from the Torah are all talking about
yeah. Right. So imagine you're at your original wedding and you have, actually I gave my husband a shofar as a gift. My college teacher told me to exchange gifts in the yichud room, and it was our wedding was right before Rosh Hashana, so I gave him a shofar. I'm like, what do I give you? I don't know. So imagine at your wedding you receive you blow this big shofar and you want to remember that beloved day, that huge event. So every year anniversary, let's blow the shofar and remember that love. And I feel like it's so romantic and extra of Hashem.
Yeah. Why are you making fun of it?
What? The shofar? Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's just awkward.
It wasn't a nice idea.
I don't know. The whole yichud room thing is awkward in general. A bunch of people waiting on the door, knocking, and you're just trying to eat and give a gift, and you're banging on the door, and then there's men coming in before to check it out. The whole thing is just weird.
Yeah.
It's not something I remember.
That's an amazing idea.
No, it is a beautiful idea, and I feel like it's very extra of Hashem, and I feel like these extra little reminders Hashem put throughout history. Then we had the breaking of the walls by Yericho. That was a shofar, where Yeshua blew the shofar, and then all the walls of Yericho fell down, and that symbolizes the walls falling down in your relationship, right? The walls that we build, and blowing that shofar to have that vulnerability and release those walls. And I'm sure there's more symbolism throughout the thing, but Hashem is blow the shofar so we can remember our love story. And that to me is just so special and powerful. So when I hear the shofar, I'm this is Hashem's just love for us and showing us this romantic. It's the ways that we see that Hashem is romantic with us and wants us to remember our love story throughout history, and how the shofar was planted through so many moments in history. Obviously, when they crowned the kings in the Beit Mikdash. I'm assuming that they blew the shofar because it was said that throughout every Yom Tov it says, right, Utzkatkem B'Chatzos, every Chag, right? So every time we're having this time of togetherness with Hashem, every anniversary, every time when we're stopping life and being with Hashem, we have that Chauffeur again, that little love note from Hashem saying, like, remember how much we love each other, right? Don't forget about the love, right? The Chauffeur is not like it's not like something you do, right? It's just there to show the love, which is so important in a relationship. Sometimes it's not about doing deeds and like doing for each other. Sometimes we just stop and remember all that, the feeling and the love and all the good things in our relationship. There's so much value in that. Okay. Your wedding song. Yeah, exactly. Like re-listening to it and all the feelings that it comes, right? It is very romantic.
It's Hashem's music.
Yeah.
Music brings back memories to us.
Exactly. It's like music does evoke a lot of memories, a lot, right? If you have like your song. Okay, so that was the idea. So we accept those two things, the Chauffeur, and obviously the ultimate unity with Hashem. Mashiach will be heralded, I hope I pronounced that correctly, with the sound of the Chauffeur. So Hashem is telling us, like, this is the Chauffeur as a sign of my love between you and me, and when Mashiach comes, he's going to blow the Chauffeur, right? That's why sometimes when you're in your house and you hear the Chauffeur blowing, you're like, is Mashiach here, right? Because it reminds us of that love, right? Like, you know that story where some crazy guy got up and like blew the Chauffeur, and everyone thought that Mashiach came throughout history, and then Menachem Mendel Hardakar went out of his room and smelled, and said, no, Mashiach's not here. And they asked, why do you have to open his window and smell? Because in his room, there always smelled the smell of Mashiach. There always had that scent of oneness, because in his room, he had that oneness, and he had that revelation. Anyway, so yeah, Mashiach, that's why when we hear the Chauffeur, we always think of Mashiach's here, right? Because Mashiach is that time when there's no coverings and there's no barriers. So even though now we're in a loving relationship with Hashem, there's so many barriers, there's life that gets in the way. And when Mashiach comes, all it is the same relationship we have with Hashem, but it says Hashem will remove the covering from the sun. So all of the coverings, all the tzimtzumim that cover up Hashem's love for us, all the things that happen in life that feel like they're so bad and negative and they're so blocking between us and Hashem, all of those will be revealed and we'll see everything as it is, and we'll just have total ecstasy and oneness all day because we don't have any of that blockages. It's like having that moment of like yichud in the love moment of that oneness, but also with our beloved. Imagine that was just all the time because there was nothing distracting. You don't have to worry about anything else in life, right? So it's that like ecstasy that we'll achieve, and with the coming of the blowing of the Chauffeur will bring that in. Okay. Let that sink in. I'm gonna blow the Chauffeur, and then we're gonna learn the mic. That's one set. Okay. We'll practice if I want to do it on Rosh Hashana. But I think you can't do it on Rosh Hashana unless you learn all the lachos associated with before, because it's muksa unless you're doing it for the mitzvah. Actually, Rosh Hashana it's not muksa, so I think you could even practice, right? Okay, we'll see. Okay, so the sound of the Chauffeur I wanted to blow for you because it's not just that we blow the Chauffeur, right? There's a specific way of blowing the Chauffeur, and it's not just by random. And I think knowing what it is, when we hear the Chauffeur throughout Rosh Hashana, at the end of each stage of Malchios, after Malchios, we blow the Chauffeur to crown Hashem as king. After Zichronos, we blow the Chauffeur to remember and evoke all of the beautiful memories and love that we have for Hashem, and all of the things that we like, all our whole relationship. And then the Chauffeurs, which is just about Chauffeur in and of itself, we also blow the Chauffeur. So even Chauffeur itself has a message. It's not just a medium for the other two. It also has a really deep message for us, not just connected to Malchios and Zichronos. So when we hear it, it's even just knowing what some of the messages of the specific sounds can really resonate with us and allow us to tap deeper into like what's going on in our heart. So I heard a beautiful, beautiful teaching many years ago that just talks to me so much about the three sounds of the Chauffeur. So the first sound, it's called the tekiah. The tekiah, like litkah from the word to blow the Chauffeur, is one long uninterrupted sound. And that represents in our lives the beginning of our lives, right? When we're born and life is just perfect, right? That beginning, our youth, when all of life is just handed to us, when our only worry is when we're going to get food and sleep, right? It's our life, it's uninterrupted. And there's only goodness, right? And we're a whole person. So that's why it's called the long, whole, unbroken sound, right? It's when we're complete and great and we have a perfect existence, right? Then we have the Shavarim. It's a little bit broken. So that represents when, after the initial perfection of wholeness of life as an infant, as we get into a little bit of teenagehood or adulthood or adolescence, life starts to break us a little bit. We realize life isn't as perfect as it seems, right? There's challenges in life. We begin to experience the normal challenges in life that everyone experiences, right? Hardships from within, hardships from without, just things that don't go our way, nothing going our way sometimes, feeling challenges with other people, with friends, with social things, just feeling the regular fights with our parents, trying to find our identity, trying to figure out who we are. Life gets hard, trying to figure out what we want to do in life, right? There's hardships throughout that period of like childhood, even when your child realizes like just nothing is going my way, right? Like why can't things just go my way? As it progresses into adolescence, I'm like, I don't even know what I want to do with my life. But it's like still a good life, but there's some breaks, and you start to realize is that there's a lot of challenges in life, right? And that is represented by shavarim, because the word shavarim means shavor, it's a broken sound. And it's when life's challenges begin to break us. And then comes the teruah. That represents complete brokenness, right? It's when sometimes, unfortunately, we progress in life, sometimes for earlier people, sometimes in others, but almost inevitably everyone experiences suffering in their life, which completely shatters them and breaks them, like the sound of the teruah, which is just completely fragmented and shattered. It sounds like sobbing, just like upheaving, crying, right? The first one just sounds like a long, complete sound of like, wow, like a baby, I just want my food. And then there's just the brokenness of like a little bit of like sobbing. And then there's just brokenness. Like I can't even catch my breath. I can't catch a break. And it's when life, unfortunately, for most of us, breaks us completely, right? Hopefully none of us experience this and should experience this. But for many people at some point in their lives, they experience real suffering where something just shatters them completely, and they go through something or many things that just break them over and over again, and they feel broken, and they feel like they can't move on, and they feel like they're in pieces, and they can't piece themselves back together, and they feel like they're just completely done and broken. And that's represented by the teruah. And I think this applies not just in a life level where life begins just pure and easy, and then we get challenged, and then we have brokenness, right? I think also throughout, even in a yeah.
It says that the origins is from evil.
Roa, from Ra. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. It's just when bad happens, right? Bad stuff happens, and some people worse than others.
Making a big loud, a happy noise, which is weird because the origin of evil is Roa.
Right.
And then Teruah is something joyful.
Right, Litra. Well, we'll get to it. We'll explain that soon. We'll understand the joy in the brokenness, but so I think even in an isolated situation, even in a relationship, right? Relationships start off happy honeymoon, right? And then we start to have, some people have a few fights, and then sometimes people just reach a point in the relationship where it's completely shattered, right? Sometimes they're just like done and broken, sometimes in a relationship. And they feel like this is it, right? We're just too broken to continue. How could we ever piece the pieces back together, right? And I think throughout life, we can't deny that bad things happen, and that we've all reached a point probably where we feel so broken and so shattered, and we don't know where we're gonna pick ourselves up from there. But then, after the three comes, I forgot to do it in my first set, right? No, I did it. I did the Tekiah Gedola. After the Tekiah and then the Teruah, the Shavarim and then the Teruah comes, let's try. Let's try our other Chauffeur. This one's broken. It has holes in it. It's harder than it looks. We have the Tekiah Gedola, which is supposed to be, thank you. I practice in my spare time, which is never. Which is the Tekiah Gedola, which has to be longer than all of the previous blows. There's actually a lot of halachos. They have to be a similar amount of length. So the Tekiah, Shavarim, and Teruah have to be the same length of time. And then the Tekiah Gedola has to be longer, which represents something so deep in our lives that even though we go through life and we're broken, if we can then, which most of us do, right? We all can remember a time when we were shattered and thought we would never pick ourselves up, and then we did, right? How many times do we feel in that moment that we will never be back whole again? And I know I felt that as early as 22. I thought, that's it, my life is over. I was going through like severe depression, and I literally thought, that's it, like I could never be broken. I was waiting for like life to end. I'm like, I feel like old people who are like done and just waiting for life to end. Not like, I just felt like Hashem taken everything from me. And in that moment, I just didn't think it was possible. And then through a lot of help, Baruch Hashem, I got like back to a place where the lights turned back on after depression, and I was like, oh, like I can start picking myself up, right? But then you're just thinking like, okay, I won't be shattered forever. And when you start picking up those pieces and you put yourself back together, what you realize afterwards is that you achieve a wholeness again that's much greater than the wholeness that you had before being broken. that the wholeness that you that you started with, the teruah, the initial wholeness that you had before, when you thought everything was perfect and you thought you were on a good trajectory for life and you thought you'd be happy with that, after you experience brokenness and then real brokenness, right? Because a little brokenness doesn't force you to start piecing yourself back together. When we're truly shattered and we're forced to piece ourselves back together and start again and recreate a new sense of self from the pieces that we've learned and from the challenges and from whatever broke us, we come out so much stronger, right? Like something that's been like a knot that's been retied, like a double knot. That knot is stronger and it's gonna be much harder to break something that was reconnected, but that's in a simple way. In a much deeper way, we learn that the wholeness that we achieve after being broken, that wholeness is much, much longer and everlasting. That's real wholeness, right? Like a relationship that's in a honeymoon stage, you think that you want that forever, but after you've achieved brokenness and you reconnect after that and you repiece your relationship back together, you realize that wholeness that you have now after being broken is nothing compared to the wholeness you thought you had before, right? That just seems like so superficial, the wholeness. It is a superficial, a wholeness that comes from, being born and everything, life going perfectly and life handing on a silver platter, eventually is not a real wholeness, right? And the Katzka Rav, one of my favorite quotes from the Katzka Rav is that there's nothing as whole as a broken heart.
It's like you're getting stronger.
You're strengthening yourself. And he also says that there's nothing as broken as a whole heart. When you feel whole and satisfied and you feel full of yourself and there's no brokenness, right? The hay as a symbol of life, the Shuva, the hay, and we're returning the hay into Shuva, the Shuva of Tishrei, we're returning that hay, and the hay represents that fundamental brokenness in life, that there's a gap between how we want things to be and how they are, and how things should be and how they are. When we can embrace that gap and open ourselves up, that's when love can spill in. That's when we have a vessel. Without being broken, there's no vessel to receive anything. So breaking, right? If something's a complete whole, there's nothing as broken as that, because how can you receive if you're complete, if you're covered, right? If you're like a ches or a ches that had no hole, there's no way for anything to come in. When somebody walks around and feels so perfect and life is perfect and they're so full of themselves, there's no room to enter there, right? There's just themselves and this false ideal of illusion, right? Of wholeness, but there's no space. And when Hashem cracks us and breaks us open, although in the moment we feel shattered and broken, ultimately we realize that Hashem was making a space for light to flood in, for love to flood in, for growth, for connection, for unity. And that's that nesira, that distance, that Adam and Chava experience, right? That separation, that brokenness, breaking apart a whole creature to create a much greater wholeness. And that's really the theme of Rosh Hashana, that you need to separate sometimes, which seems so painful, and it is a time of pain, but that is the only way to achieve true unity and true wholeness, when there's that crack first and then there's that separation. So this really resonates with me, to understand when we hear the Chauffeur, that we understand that we hope to achieve a greater wholeness. And we don't want to have to be broken more. We want to understand that we don't need Hashem to break us through tragedies of bad things, but we can break ourselves through just thinking about the state of reality, right? We can crack ourselves open. We don't need bad things to break us. We really can do that cracking on our own by just thinking about the state of reality, the state of the world, the state of things that are happening around us, and think about ourselves, right? And think about another, and break ourselves open, to push ourselves, to crack ourselves open and make space for another person. We can be broken, the Rebbe says, by just acknowledging the state of Golos and the state of the world as far as it is from the reality. We don't need Hashem to bring us external things to break us, right? That's not what we want at all. So we're davening that we can open ourselves up, crack open that illusion that we have, and have room to make this vessel to receive all of the brachas and love that Hashem wants to give us on Rosh Hashana. This just reminds me of another acronym in Elul from, if anyone has to go, you can go, from the Reb Nathan Spira. He was a Kabbalist, a mystic and Kabbalist in Krakow. And he taught that a new acronym for Elul, right? We all know Ani Ladodi V'Dodili, Ino Liadi V'Samti Lach, right? Ino Liadi V'Samti Lach, and what's the one about the Orla? Es Lavav Ve'es Lavav Zaracha, Umal Hashem, and Hashem should pierce and remove the foreskin of your heart and the hearts of your children. Es Lavavcha Ve'es Lavav Zaracha. And then we have this new one that says that the acronym for Elul is also Aron Luchos V'Shivrei Luchos. Okay, get this. That he says that it's Aleph, Lamed, Vav, and Lamed, which means the ark, the Aron that contains the Luchos, the whole Luchos, and the Shivrei Luchos, the broken shards of the first Luchos. It's too long of a teaching to teach right now, but what it alludes to is that we've been discussed so many times that Moshe's greatest moment was breaking the Luchos, because sometimes we need to break something in order for a greater one to come. So in Elul, we're understanding that deep idea that the Aron, why does the Aron contain the broken Luchos, right? Just contain the second one that's better, but you can't achieve the second better Luchos, the more whole Luchos, unless you first had that shattering. And when we can pick up each shatter, go back through our life and remember every moment that shattered us and realize how that contributed to our greater wholeness right now, That's why we save in the Aron Luchos and Shivrei Luchos, each fragment of the broken Luchos. And each fragment of the broken Luchos are every fragment of the broken dreams and the broken hopes that we had in our lives and the broken relationships, the things that is the innocence inside us that broke, right? There are all the things that broke inside of us that we want to just forget. No, we're saying, no, remember those things now, Rosh Hashanah, and keep those pieces, not just the good ones. And remember that those added so much to your greater wholeness right now. That the whole Luchos, the whole you, that's the greater whole you, that's so much greater now, is because of every one of those pieces of the fragments. Hopefully we'll get there and understand that and see that revelation and see that, because it's easier said than done, all of this, right? So that's the idea in short. Just wishing us all to have a meaningful, peaceful, growthful, inspiring, connecting Rosh Hashanah. Hashem should shower us with brachos and renew our relationship with so many outpouring brachos that we should have. Our vessels should be overflowing with brachos, and all the things that we do, all the hard work, those are all amazing vessels. We all have tons of vessels. They should be full and overflowing with blessings. And yeah, may we be blessed for an amazing year, and this new life that Hashem breathes into this year should breathe us all, should renew us with renewed vigor and energy and koach, just tons of koach, to just continue being the amazing, incredible pillars that we are, that each one of you are. Thanks for joining. Yeah. Wait, you can't look at the picture. Let me just end.
Remember two things: crossbow and
Should I end it? Okay. Bye. Thank you for watching, and thank you for joining.